I remember the sound first. Not his voice, not the music, just the sound of paper sliding across a white tablecloth. Then the room went quiet, in pieces, one table, then another, then the whole hall. Someone laughed once, nervously, because they thought it had to be part of a joke. Then Vincent said my name, and nobody laughed again. At my husband's retirement party, in front of 200 guests, he slid a manila envelope toward me instead of raising a toast. Inside were divorce papers, already filed, already signed. My name is Diane Castellano. I'm 69 years old, and for 44 years I was Mrs. Vincent Castellano of Staten Island, New York. That night was supposed to celebrate 38 years of his service to the FDNY. Instead, it became the night my entire life cracked open. Let me take you back, because by the time I understood what was happening, it was almost too late. Vincent and I met in 1982 at a block party on Highland Boulevard. He was 26, broad-shouldered, smelling like smoke and Old Spice, just 1 year into his life at the firehouse. I was 24, working as a secretary at PS 48. We married that spring at Our Lady of Good Counsel, and within 6 years we had 2 children, Anthony, who became an NYPD detective, and Sophia, who taught 2nd grade in New Dorp. For decades, our life followed a steady rhythm. Sunday dinners on Wyman Avenue, sausage and peppers, garlic drifting from the kitchen. The deed to that house had always been in my name. My father helped with the down payment back in 1986, and Vincent never thought twice about it. I learned to live around his 24-hour shifts, the way every firefighter's wife does. Back then, I thought routine meant safety. I know now it can also hide a secret for years. But about 2 years before retirement, small things shifted. Vincent started taking calls outside, voice low. He began driving to the pension office alone, something he'd never done, because I had always gone with him to file those forms. And my niece Christina, my sister Rosalie's daughter, the girl Vincent had treated like family for more than 30 years, started showing up more often, always asking him about pension paperwork. Once I noticed a new gold bracelet on her wrist. Once she let Florida slip into a sentence and quickly changed the subject. She always brought Vincent his coffee first, before anyone else. In front of me, she was the sweet niece. I see now I was watching it happen and refusing to name it. There were smaller signs too, the kind you only understand later. I once saw him straighten his shirt before she came through the door. A small thing, almost nothing. But after 44 years, you know when a man is trying to be seen by someone else. One night, I came downstairs for water and found him smiling at his phone in the dark. Not laughing, not reading. Smiling like a young man waiting for someone to choose him. Because here is the truth nobody tells you. After 44 years, suspicion doesn't feel like instinct. It feels like tearing down your own home with your bare hands. So I told myself Vincent was just frightened of retiring. And maybe that was the truest thing I missed. Retirement terrified him more than any fire ever had. At 64, without the uniform, without the applause, he didn't know who he was anymore. Christina made him feel young. She made him feel needed. And after a lifetime of being called a hero, Vincent was too proud to notice he was being handled. The party was at the Firehouse Banquet Hall on Forest Avenue, decorated with banners and photos from his 38 years on the job. ID spent 3 weeks planning it. And there, in front of his captain, his crew, our children, and 200 guests, Vincent stood not to thank anyone, not to toast our marriage, but to slide that envelope across the table. "Diane," he said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, "I want my freedom. I already filed." I sat there in my good blue dress, the one I bought just for that night, and I smiled. For 3 full seconds, I genuinely believed it was a joke. Anthony stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. Sophia reached for my hand. Vincent didn't look away, he didn't even blink. I understood later why he did it in public. He thought humiliating me in front of everyone would make me too ashamed to fight. He thought I'd disappear quietly. He was wrong. After the shock wore off, I hired an attorney, Renata Acosta, a sharp woman who knew firefighter pensions better than anyone Vincent ever expected me to find. She pulled Vincent's benefits file, and that's when the first real crack split wide open. Diane, Renata said, sliding a form across her desk. Did you know he changed his pension survivor beneficiary 18 months ago? It's no longer you. My hands went cold. Who is it? She turned the page. Christina Romano, my niece, the same girl who sat at my Thanksgiving table just 5 months earlier asking me to pass the cranberry sauce. The same girl ID watched grow up at every Easter and every christening. Believe me, I had to read that name twice before my mind accepted what my eyes were seeing. Then Renata frowned and pointed to the bottom of the page. There, a spousal consent signature here. Diane, is this yours? I looked once and felt my stomach drop. It was my name, but it was not my hand. Renata didn't speak for a few seconds. She only took off her glasses, looked at the signature again, and said, "Then we have a problem." But here is where it got worse. Renata kept pulling records, and what she found next was worse than the beneficiary form. The money had started moving 6 years earlier, cash from decades of overtime that Vincent privately called his side fund. The affair itself, Renata believed, had become intimate about 2 years before retirement. Every document seemed to protect Christina first, and together they had quietly bought a condo in Cape Coral, Florida, paid in full $210,000. While I was clipping coupons for our grocery budget, my husband was building an entire second life with my own niece. Christina had not found a lover. She had found a lonely man with a pension, a side fund, and a desperate need to feel chosen. I confronted them that Sunday at the same table where Christina had asked for cranberry sauce. I didn't scream. I set her plate down, looked her in the eye, and said, "Tell everyone what you and your uncle bought in Florida, Christina." The room went still. Sophia's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Rosalie looked at her daughter, then at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw my sister afraid of the answer. Vincent started to speak. "Diane, it's not," but Anthony cut him off. "Sit down, Dad." Christina looked at Vincent before she looked at me. That told me everything. "Aunt Diane, you don't understand," she whispered. "Then explain it," I said. She couldn't. And then came the part nobody expected, the part that still turns my stomach. Anthony didn't use his badge. He used the one thing he'd learned in 20 years around detectives: follow the records. He hired a private investigator, and 3 weeks later, the truth came back. Christina had been engaged the entire time to a man in New Jersey, someone she'd been seeing since before the affair even began. She wasn't building a life with Vincent. She was draining his secret fund, securing that Florida condo in her own name, and planning to vanish the moment the deed cleared. My husband didn't just betray me for someone he loved. He destroyed our marriage, our family, and decades of trust, for a woman who was never planning to stay with him at all. When Vincent learned the truth, I watched 38 years of false confidence collapse. He sat at my kitchen table, and it was mine now, since the house had always been in my name, and put his face in his hands. What rose in me wasn't satisfaction. It was something quieter and sadder. The divorce took 11 months. But the real trial began the day Renata placed that forged consent form in front of me. She asked how much of my own life had been signed away without my knowing. Vincent never looked at me when Renata presented that form to the court. He stared at the table, the same way he had stared past me at his retirement party. Renata fought for every year I had stood behind that man. In the end, I was awarded half his pension. The house on Weeman Avenue stayed with me, and the beneficiary change was reversed because the signature that made it possible had never been mine. Once the forgery surfaced, the FDNY pension fund opened its own internal review. Vincent never recovered the condo either. He had wired the full amount but had been foolish enough to call it a gift, and the deed had been in Christina's name from the very first day. That night, Sophia came into my bedroom and sat beside me without a word. She was a grown woman, a teacher, preparing for her own marriage, but in that moment, she looked like the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. 3 days later, Rosalie called me, crying so hard I could barely understand her. But there are some things a sister can cry over and still never fix. Anthony hasn't spoken to his father since. Sophia still calls him on holidays, carefully, the way you handle something fragile and a little broken. Once, when he came to drop off a box of my old photographs, he opened his mouth like he wanted to say something, but even then, he seemed more ashamed of being fooled than of what he had done to me. As for Christina, she got her Florida condo. She also married her New Jersey fiancé 8 months later, in a ceremony none of us were invited to. Christina never stood in a courtroom the way Vincent did. She never had to explain herself to a judge. Maybe that is why her betrayal still feels unfinished. People think that part should make me furious. It does. But anger is easier than admitting that sometimes the worst people still walk away with the keys. Vincent got nothing but an empty apartment in New Dorp and a pension cut in half. Last month, I sat at Sophia's engagement dinner. Vincent came alone, grayer now, smaller somehow, eating quietly at the far end of the table. Nobody mentioned Christina. Nobody mentioned Florida. We simply passed the bread, the way families do when there's nothing left to say. I think about that often, how 44 years of Sunday dinners, of christenings and graduations can end with 2 people passing bread in silence. Love is supposed to be a promise. I learned the hard way that for some people, it's just a stop on the way to something else. So let me leave you with this, because I still don't have a clean answer myself. Who betrayed me more, Vincent, the husband of 44 years, or Christina, the niece who sat at my own family table? Tell me honestly in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story reminded you of someone in your own family, you are not alone. More people are sitting in that quiet house than you could ever know.